Um, Everyone knows me. My name's Christian. I'm a wellness coach. Good to see you all. And so tonight we're going to talk about the common ways to come across toxins in your home that are not necessarily the common places you might think the toxins will be. You know, in the garage, you've got oils and gasoline and powerful solvents and stuff like that. So everyone knows there's some toxic stuff out in the garage. But just as toxic are some of the things in our food and some of the things in two cabinets that are ironically both meant to be part of our first line of defense against illnesses. So the reason for this irony is that due to the massive amount of toxins in the products in our cleaning and medicine cabinets, they cause more illnesses than they prevent. So that may sound crazy, but unfortunately, toxins don't always have an immediate symptom. So a lot of times an illness will simply pop up and we'll convince ourselves we have, I don't know, picked up a bug somewhere or whatever. And a lot of times it's just a symptom that has manifested itself out of a toxin overload. So starting with the cleaning cabinet, again, this is a place that is supposed to be one of the places we go to protect ourselves from illness. And so when cleaning products are studied in closed environments, which who can clean a tub and not breathe the stuff that you're cleaning the tub with? If you're using bleach, you're breathing bleach. And so anything that you breathe, and if you can smell it, you're breathing it, you're inhaling it. Anything that you breathe goes directly into your lungs, and there is very little barrier between your lungs and your bloodstream. So pretty much all the toxins that we breathe in just go directly into the bloodstream. They don't always form an immediate symptom. And so we think, well, I lived through it 4 million times that I've cleaned my house. I've lived through it and I've never gotten sick right after, so it's not making me sick. And that's a very common thought process. Unfortunately, over time, it can lead to these illnesses that simply pop up out of nowhere. So the toxin or the toxic products that are in our cleaning cabinets can be switched out for safe ones. There's tons of do-it-yourself recipes with clean and safe ingredients. There's already made alternative toxin-free products for every job. I prefer to use Castile soap. You can add stuff to it, you can dilute it and use it for tons and tons of jobs around the house. It's just a natural oil soap that again can be used to make tons of different do-it-yourself products to get cleaned up around the house without having a ton of toxins. So that's my favorite go-to for toxin-free cleaning supplies is Castile soap. Dr. Bronner's makes very affordable, super awesome, soapy, sudsy Castile soap, and it's great for a ton of jobs around the house. So that's the cleaning cabinet. You know, again, we look at this thing as a way to prevent illness, and unfortunately, if we're exposing ourselves to the toxins that are there, we are inevitably leading ourselves towards illness. So then the medicine cabinet is exactly the same. It is meant to help us prevent illness, to manage symptoms when they show up, etc. And so unfortunately, there's nothing in a drugstore that's really meant to keep us well. There's nothing there that is a cure for anything. Just about everything in the drugstore is full of man-made stuff, and the human body simply doesn't recognize man-made stuff as beneficial. And so then, you think about the long lists of side effects, warnings, the countless commercials with lawsuits, and these huge pharmaceutical companies having to pay out millions and millions of dollars for something that they rushed through processing, never tested for security, and we become the testing ground for those products, only to find out a couple of years later that just like the rest of the man-made products that are out there, the human body doesn't work well with it, and then all of a sudden we see a commercial for that product. Did you get some sort of cancer or illness because of this product? Well, call the lawyers who specialize in this and let's go get them. And so, that narrative is so common, we don't even think about it. It's just another thing that's on TV. But that should be a red flag for all of us. When we're using man-made solutions, a lot of times we'll have to use another man-made solution to fix the problems that the first man-made solution created. So rather than these predictable side effects, we want to use nature-made solutions so that we get unexpected health benefits, not these expected side effects. And this is something that I talk about on a lot of wellness subjects, because unfortunately man-made stuff is everywhere, and it's easy to expose ourselves to that stuff. The cost of pharmaceuticals is another prohibitory part of it, and so I prefer nature's medicine cabinet, which I'll just kind of run through some of the stuff that I use and others use, which are proven effective. A lot of these things are free, and they're all considered generally safe, though I always ask that any changes be checked over with your doctor just in case, especially if you're taking medications. So first, aromatherapy, essential oils and diffusing, proven to be amazing for pain relief, sleep troubles, etc., digestive problems. There's a huge list and tons of studies to back up the science. Moving on, chiropractic, foods that heal. So alkaline vegetables and fruit are the best medicine there is. Massage therapy, herbology, Reiki, sunshine, exercise and moving your body, acupressure and acupuncture, quality sleep, CBD, yoga, laughter, meditation, and breathing. So that's just a few of the things that I like to have at hand for addressing any kind of illness or malady. If your medicine cabinet is full of that stuff, you stand in a far better position. And these things are all extremely low risk. So it gives us a little bit of peace of mind, knowing that, it isn't just going to, whatever we're taking isn't just going to turn into some horrific poison a couple years down the line when they finally start having people sue them for the problems that come up. So it's certainly worthwhile to look a little bit closer at these two cabinets and take control and put kind of a hold on this barrage of toxins that are hanging out there. So it's not always easy to tell what products are horrifically toxic, but we do have a great resource to help us with that. So I use EWG.org, Environmental Working Group. These guys are amazing. They have, I'm going to come back to them here in a little bit, but they have this database where you can type in the product that you're using for cleaning or any product that you use on your body. You can just type in the name of the product and they have tested everything on the shelves. So they then have a toxin rating for each of those products. And the lower the number, the better. You'll see there's a color that goes from green to red. And so the color gives you an indication of the toxin level in that product. But it's a great place to just type in some of the products you're using around the house, and it will tell you how safe that stuff is. So I encourage you to use EWG.org. It is a very trusted, highly trusted, and awesome way to double check the products you're using and make sure that all is the way it should be. So any questions about those two cabinets and this sort of paradox that's created by the fact that they're supposed to be protecting us from illness, but they're likely doing the opposite? Any feedback or thoughts about that?
What about paint? How can you find a safe paint?
I would say use Google for that. And then what it will show you is not only some brands that use less toxic stuff, but it will also show you what you can use to protect yourself when you are painting.
Okay.
And EWG.org has some great information on that as well, on personal protective equipment and how to use it so that you're not breathing those horrible fumes. And Tammy, I can relate. For whatever reason, whenever I paint, and it started, oh goodness, probably 30 some years ago, the paint fumes attack my sinuses. Like I have to leave the room. I don't know what it is, or I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's just this toxic soup of nasty stuff. So, but yeah, that would be a good idea. There are several brands. I can't think of any right off the top of my head, but there are several brands that use less toxic stuff. And so I think a quick Google search will help you find some products that'll help there. And then I think EWG also, I think if you just type paint, then it will give you some companies that do that. Okay. So now I'm gonna kind of stay with EWG. We're gonna move on to the most common source of toxins in our bodies, and that's food and what we drink. So at EWG.org, you can go to their local drinking water database. And then you just type in your zip. So when you do that, they have tested the water in every single municipality in the US. So you just type in your city zip and it will give you a list and percentage with concentrations of the toxic stuff that is in your local drinking tap water, okay? I did this for Fredonia, and it is, the narrative around Fredonia is that the water is great. It was no better than Jamestown's water. You know, some pretty nasty stuff in there that doesn't have any taste. And so a lot of people think, if I'm not tasting anything, if I don't have that sulfury kind of gross taste to the water, it's probably fine. And unfortunately, there's a ton of toxic stuff that doesn't have a flavor or taste. And that stuff can very easily be hiding in drinking water. So when you look up your zip, it will show you what's in your drinking water, and it will tell you what you can do to make that drinking water drinkable. So there are reverse osmosis machines like Berkey. There's the tap thing like Pure or Brita. You just put it right on the tap, and then there's the pitchers. So there's a ton of different ways to manage the toxins in tap water, and they give you a recommendation right when you're there, so they can help you protect yourself from tap water. So also at ewg.org, while we're talking about things we put in our bodies, they have two great references for fresh food. The name of them, I think one is called the Dirty Dozen, and then the other one's the Clean 15. And so these are examples of produce that, for the Dirty Dozen, have historically and are very commonly barraged with tons of toxic stuff. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen in the news where Roundup is now paying millions and millions of dollars to a bunch of different people who worked with Roundup and got skin cancer or other horrible, horrible diseases. And so there's a bunch of really super toxic stuff inside Roundup and any other lawn maintenance, weed killer type of stuff. And so we can simply use table salt. It's just as toxic, but it's not nearly as toxic to us or to the environment. And plants can't handle it. So that's another thing you could easily Google, is how to use table salt to kill weeds, that kind of thing. But that's just one example of the toxic stuff that Monsanto and other companies like that are willing to spray food with. So it's kind of back to our discussion earlier, Tammy. You know, we all sort of believe that there's the FDA and these other organizations that are out there to protect us, and they're not protecting us. There's no safety testing done on the vast majority of stuff that's out there for us to buy. And so we have to take charge and just protect ourselves. Obviously that can start to open a Pandora's box. Like, why would these organizations allow us to be poisoned like this on such a regular basis? So those questions that pop up are for politicians and those who are leaders. So don't hesitate to reach out to your representative if you have these types of questions and want answers. The more people who speak up, the more change will come. The other list there, 15. So that's 15 produce items that typically do not get barraged with chemical pesticides. So using these two lists, we can get a sense for, okay, well, I'd love to buy organic all the time, but I can't afford it. So I'm going to use these two lists. For the Dirty Dozen, I'm always going to get organic because, wow, the stuff they're using on those products just goes directly into the cell of the produce. It doesn't just stay on the skin where you can rinse it off. It's in each cell. It is ubiquitous throughout the whole peach, apple, strawberry, whatever, because a lot of these pesticides are used in the water that's used to water them. So the pesticides are drawn up through the roots. They're called systemic pesticides. They're drawn up through the roots, and this literally puts the toxic stuff into every single cell of the produce. So after, using these guides, the avoidance of inflammatory foods like artificial ingredients, anything made with corn, except organic sweet corn on the cob. That's really the only safe corn product. Anything highly processed, like most packaged foods and most restaurant foods. Excessive sugar, most dairy, most peanut products, white rice, white potatoes, white breads, white pastas, all that stuff is really quite inflammatory. So we want to look for alternatives to each. So the alternative to these toxic produce items is organic. So some of the common ones on the Dirty Dozen are strawberries, spinach, peaches. So checking that list out can really shed some light on what would be best purchased organic, and what you can kind of say, man, I guess I don't need to worry about pineapple. It doesn't get barraged with toxins, and then I'm cutting the skin off anyway. So that, it gives you a home base to start from and say, okay, well, if I'm going to start getting toxins out of my food, this is a great place to start. So I touched on water real quick because I was talking about EWG. I'm going to go back there real quick. And so not everybody likes to drink just plain water. And I totally get that. So it's really easy to just slice up some fruit or some cucumbers or whatever and throw that in the water to give you some taste, but then it also balances the pH. It gives you some vitamins and some stuff along with the water. So again, you get these unexpected benefits instead of expected side effects from the toxic stuff. So if we're ingesting a huge load of calories with energy drinks and all this other stuff, we're not really hydrating ourselves very well. And it also makes it difficult for the body to keep up with the toxin load. So our livers, kidneys, our entire toxic removal system works really very, very well. The problem is that there are so many toxins in so many different sources that eventually it's very likely that if you eat the American diet or use regular cleaning products with tons of toxins in them, you will overload that toxin system, and it can cause problems with the kidneys and the liver. But the biggest problem is that you're not getting those toxins out of the body, and that's what those organs are for. So if we can minimize the toxins that are going in, we're giving our toxin removal system its best chance of keeping up. So like any and all healthy changes that I ever talk about, awareness around this type of stuff is certainly our most reliable tool. So taking the time to look at labels, choosing glass over plastic, doing some food prep to bring food with you so you're not stuck hoping that some random place on the way that you're going has something safe for you to eat. You know, they likely don't. So then, you know, for events, rather than saying, maybe switch it up and try a potluck. You know, even with a potluck, you might have someone bringing hot dogs, but it's homemade food. It's hopefully going to be better than, you know, some random junk food that's delivered from a restaurant. So there are several ways to, you know, try to just kind of beat the typical habits that we're in, without feeling super restricted and you know, just kind of going with these healthier alternative versions. So I'm going to share a long list of toxins to avoid. I'm going to share my healthy and unhealthy fats and sugar lists so that reading labels will start to become easier. I know it's not easy. You know, there's a lot of words on labels that are difficult to read. Some of them are purely natural and very good for us. Most of the words we can't read are horribly bad for us. So a basic rule of thumb when you're looking at a food label is if it's 700 ingredients in one food, you can bet that a lot of that stuff is man-made. And so if it's, you know, 4 or 5 ingredients, that's far less likely to be hyper processed, and the body might actually think that it's food. So there's some thought to be put in food choice with that part of it. So when we kind of decide to get away from toxins and protect the family, protect ourselves, the right baby steps can make a huge difference. So my recommendation is to always count toxins instead of calories. Most toxin-free foods and drinks don't have these quote unquote empty calories. So calorie counting can be skipped when eating and drinking what's safe. You know, we count these calories as if each calorie has the same quality. And we've talked about this on other Zooms, but it certainly relates here. And so we want to think about, okay, what's the quality of the calorie? Did it come from fast food? It's probably not a very good calorie. Why am I counting that calorie the same as a calorie from an orange? That just doesn't make sense. And when we do it, it leads to weight gain. Like that's what happens when we count calories, when we count fat grams, carb grams, all that stuff, it leads to weight gain and this typical toxin overload. So the alternative is finding foods that aren't full of toxins. And when we do this and all of a sudden there's very few toxins in our homes, we get to know what our body's supposed to feel like. I know a heck of a lot of people that have grown up and have never known what their body's supposed to feel like and how amazing it's supposed to be. I have a ton of people my age who look like I'm pushing 50. They look like they're pushing 60. And I'm questioning how long they're going to be around, So the difference in toxin load can mean everything to someone who's starting to age. At 50, our eyes, our ears, our body, whatever is supposed to just sort of start decomposing. And I don't really buy that. I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm stronger than I've ever been. I don't have crazy gut issues like I always did before I changed my diet. So, I think it's more what we put in our body that is going to affect how our bodies react to age and that type of thing over time. So I'm guessing you guys also know people your age that look 10 to 20 years older than you. And the vast majority of that is what they're putting in their body. So I'm going to share my screen with you really quick. I'm not going to go through each of these, but I do want to just give you a sense for how, oh, I think I need Tyler to approve me with that. But when I share this list with you, I'm going to send it in email anyway, even if I can't open it here. But, oh, here we go. So here we go, toxins to avoid. And I'm going to send you this so you don't need to scramble. But you can see it starts off with some fake sugars, two of the nastiest toxic things we can put in our bodies. Then aluminum. Anything that's aluminum is highly toxic. And so think of how many people that cook or freeze with aluminum foil. Sorry, but that's a no-no. Like the aluminum ions are very easily stripped away from the foil with heat or cold. And these molecules are so small, they pass directly through what's called the blood-brain barrier, which is a protective layer outside the brain. These things pass right through and kill neurological cells like nothing. It is super, super strong toxic stuff. We don't get any symptoms whatsoever from using this. There's no symptoms. So, of course, no one thinks that there's anything wrong with using this stuff. So when you start looking at this list, artificial flavors, artificial colors, blah, 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 every letter in the alphabet has something there that's horrible. And so, here we go with some of these crazy words. Polysorbate 206080. It's these are binders that cause a thickening in our system that slows things down and as you can read here, causes problems with the immune system, linked to cancer, developmental and reproductive toxicity. So these are not neutral ingredients. They are put in food to make the production of these processed foods easier, faster, and more profitable. And so I don't want to get on board with some company that gets their profit out of poisoning me. And so I don't use companies that do that. And sometimes I'll send an email and just ask them what the heck they're doing. most don't even reply, so there's a bunch of whistleblowers out there that go to companies and literally put them on the spot with their toxic stuff. There's a documentary called What the Health, and that documentary does exactly what I'm talking about, where they go to these companies that should be protecting us, and when they're put on the spot, these companies react in crazy ways, to say the least. So that I just wanted to touch on that real quick, just to give you a sense of the breadth of that list and how long it is. And I'm not saying that starting to count calories is going to be, or to count toxins on labels is going to be easy. This is definitely a change that a lot of people see as a mountain, and that it's super difficult. But once you get going on it and think about the sort of general rule that if you see 10 million things in the ingredient list, it's probably not going to be good. If you ever see the word enriched, that means whatever they used to create this food was bleached out, stripped down, had all the nutrition that was in it removed, and then they take these man-made versions of vitamins that the body doesn't recognize as healthy, and they pump these things back into those foods. So cereals, lots of breads, etc., they're all made with this stuff called enriched flour. And enriched is such a positive word. Like, that should be good. Great, it's enriched. And so unfortunately, that's not the case. What that word is telling us is that that food has been so insanely processed that our body won't recognize it as food anymore. And so, like 90% of the rest of the stuff on food shelves, it's not food. It's there really as a money thing. And so what I tell my clients and other people I work with when they're really struggling with the food thing is, like, I almost tell them to just stay to the outside, stay in the produce section, and over to maybe the bulk section. It's like there's really very little in the middle that will serve us and where we want to go with our health. So that is kind of a visit to toxins and where they're hiding, where to find them, what to look for, and all of that. So we know that the garage can be full of toxic stuff. Now we know these other places in our house might not have the safest stuff. And so previous Zooms have all been recorded, except last month or last week rather, there was something with the recording that didn't work. So hopefully this recording will work like most have, and I'll have it posted up on my YouTube channel in a day or two. And so to find me on YouTube, just search my name, Christian Riber. I'm the only one there. And did you guys have any questions or need some direction or anything like that with this toxin stuff?
I have a question about vitamins and mineral supplements.
Okay.
Are they all man-made? Are they all junk? Are they okay?
The vast majority of them are man-made and junk. So the one-a-days, what is it, Comtrex or whatever, those common ones that you see at the drugstore, etc., they're almost always made with man-made versions of the vitamins. Okay. So I have a couple ones that I can tell you about. So for, let's see here. Here's a couple chemical-free vitamin companies. First one is Zymogen, so it's Xymogen. Another one is called Standard Process. Then there's Biotics, Biotics. Company called Metagenics, Metagenics. There's one called Apex. And then there's Quicksilver Scientific. Those are ones that I've found that use only naturally derived and plant sourced vitamins. And they've been around a while, they're trusted, and they have great business practice, which again is something to pay attention to. If there's a company out there that makes a highly toxic food or a highly toxic cleaning product, but then they also offer a quote unquote toxin free version of that, I typically don't trust that. And so these huge conglomerate companies like Johnson & Johnson that have been poisoning us for decades with talcum powder and whatever, you know, there's just a bunch of stuff that's out there that has never been safe, but we're just now finding out and taking these companies to task about it. And so that's just how it goes. You know, once one of these huge companies gets found out, then they're like, oh, well, maybe now I'll offer a safe version of this horrific gack that we've been putting on the market for decades. And so how much can we trust that product from a company that has been willing to poison people for ever? You know, so companies like Dr. Bronner's come up with industry leading ideas like sustainable organic agriculture and other awesome things like that. The officers of the corporation limit the percentage amount that they make more than the workers. There aren't a ton of companies that do these things right. And so I choose to give my business to those that do. So any other questions about how to recognize these things, how to keep them out of your home, how to help others, you know, see these same things, you know? Think about someone in your family who has always used one certain product. Maybe their mom used it, and so they always do, and it's just been their cleaning product forever. Is that going to be easy to convince them to get rid of that because it's toxic? Maybe not. You know, unfortunately, we are creatures of habit, and if we're in the habit of using ultra toxic stuff and it works like a charm and I've never gotten sick of it, why would I get rid of it? You know, so unfortunately, the mentality around this stuff, the mindset around this stuff is not easy to talk through and you know, to incite change. So it's better to maybe just sort of lead by example and, you know, just talking about what you're doing can inspire others to follow suit. But thank you guys so much for coming. And like I say, I'll have the recording up on my YouTube page. And then I'll send you guys an email with some awesome resources so that you can get up to speed on reading labels and cleaning out these cabinets to protect yourselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christian.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to see you guys. Well, have a great week, and I will be back.